Welcome back to this week's episode of the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lulu. Please welcome our esteemed guest, Ilaria Petrucci. Ilaria is a highly skilled NLP and trauma-informed coach who specializes in empowering women to transform their relationship with food, conquer emotional eating, and break free from the cycle of people-pleasing. With a background as a former fitness and nutrition specialist, Ilaria brings a unique blend of expertise in emotional well-being and weight loss, providing her clients with holistic transformations that last. Ilaria's own personal struggles with emotional eating and people-pleasing ignited her passion for supporting others facing similar challenges. Through her own journey of self-discovery, extensive research, and professional training, she's equipped herself with the knowledge and skills necessary to guide individuals toward genuine healing and positive change. With a warm and empathetic approach, Ilaria creates a safe and non-judgmental space for her clients to explore the underlying emotional triggers and traumas that contribute to their relationship with food. She understands that emotional eating is often a coping mechanism for unresolved issues and seeks to address the root causes with compassion and understanding. If you're ready to break free from emotional eating, overcome people-pleasing tendencies, and embark on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment, Ilaria Petrucci is a coach who will guide you every step of the way. Together, you'll rewrite your story, process unresolved and painful emotions, embrace self-compassion, and unlock a life filled with freedom, balance, and authentic joy. Hi, Ilaria. Welcome to the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here today.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love those flowers in the background. Those beautiful. What are those? The sunflowers?
My two favorite flowers, sunflowers and peonies.
Oh, I love peonies. I have those in my yard. They're one of my favorites too. They're so beautiful. I love those. Cool. Thanks for coming on today. Before we dive deep into emotional eating, which is your jam, your expertise, we're going to be, of course, talking about a lot of wonderful topics, but let's hear about you. So our listeners can get to know you, like a little bit about your background and not necessarily your personal journey, because we're going to dive into that a little bit more, but just kind of what got you started and what makes you tick.
Yeah, I love this question. I'm not from the UK, so I'm Italian, and I've always had this sense that there is something more when I was growing up. So when I was 19, I left home on my own, packed my bags, moved to the UK without knowing anyone. I couldn't even speak English at the time. And so I moved here, and it's been 21 years living here. I was supposed to live here for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
I know. But then kind of life took that way for me, but it's been an amazing journey for me and that's what led me to doing what I do today, because emotional eating, obviously, as you said, we're going to dive in my personal journey during this conversation, but it has been like very present in my life, and it has stopped me and jeopardized my goals for so long. And so I got to a point in my life, probably about around my 30s, 10 years ago, where I thought, this has to stop. Like, I can't let this control my life any longer, because I knew that it was stopping me from living my best life. And I'm all about living my best life. And I felt like I was out of integrity. So I literally started diving into it, all different kind of methodologies and therapies and tools and skills that I had to develop to get where I am today. And now, like, my life is completely changed since I've regained control over this substance that is not as scary as it always has felt to me. And it has changed and transformed my life, and it allowed me to do so many things that before I would have never even considered doing. And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping women to regain that control over their life and reclaim themselves and their sovereignty and their power and their confidence to live authentically without letting anything and anyone tell them otherwise or get in the way.
I love that, Ilaria. That's so in line with how I envision my work, just from a little different format, but the same thing about that empowerment with women and really helping them to reclaim their lives that are lost along the way from illness. And because I think we share those same beliefs that life is not meant to be ill or to have these specific difficulties. We all have our ups and downs, but the end result or the end in every day should be like from a joyous place. And so thank you for sharing that. And tell us a little bit about your personal journey. What kind of led you to really specialize in helping women break free from this? Was it a specific like climax? Was there something that happened in your life that really led you into this passion place and really help women to heal their relationship with food?
Yes, absolutely. There has been a couple of different things, two things mostly. Like my dream when I was like a teenager and like growing up was to be an athlete. So I've always been very health and fitness conscious, but the emotional eating has always been an obstacle and got in the way of me to achieve my athletic goals, my body goals, or my performance goals. And so as I started to become more aware and like, why can't I just stop this? I know that it goes against what I believe. It goes against what I want to, the goals that I say that I want and the things that I say that I want to achieve, but it's like, I can't give it up. So I knew that it was something more than just stop. And so I started very young to actually look into it and trying to stop. But when I moved to London, as I said, I was 19. And that's where around my 20s, I started to go to therapy and try different things. And then I had a long gap. But I was always held back by this emotional eating and binge eating. And it has become like my go-to place to either make myself feel better when I was sad or celebrate even when I was happy. It was very clear to me that I was dealing with my emotions, whether they were good emotions or bad emotions, with food. And then because I am somebody that always has to go deep into things and I always have to find a reason why, I started asking myself a lot of questions like, what does food does to me? Like, why food? Why do I go there? And I would always go to, and this is what I constantly reconfirm as well when I work with my client, 99% of people, if not 100% actually, they say, it just gives me a sort of relief. It's like comfort. It's like they sigh. And it was the same for me. It was like, I feel like it almost calms me down. And that is like the drug effect
Right.
of the behavior. And then I thought, okay, but then relief from what? What do I need relief from? And that was one of the most important questions that I asked myself, because it was like, okay, relief from discomfort. So why is it so hard to be with the discomfort? And when I actually done my trauma training, this was one of the first things that I have learned in a professional environment, if it makes sense, that actually the question to ask ourselves is not so much why the behavior, but why the discomfort, why the pain is there? Why do I need to escape? Then when you start looking at why the pain rather than why the binge, why the emotional eating, that's when you start getting to your answers. That is like the core of my work now, because everything else to me is quite superficial when it comes to healing the emotional eating and the trauma that is attached to emotional eating. And the second thing that was really like a big moment for me was to realize when I started to look into the pain, it was the discomfort that I was running away from, and that was directly linked to my people-pleasing tendencies. Every time I give myself up, or every time I don't honor myself or my choices or my needs or my wants to please somebody else, I come from a place of fear. And that is a fear of being rejected or not liked, not approved of. And if I do something and they don't like it, and whenever I'm there, emotions arise from that place, which is resentment, this, again, discomfort. I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. So within ourselves, we know that we are self-betraying through authenticity. And so those are the emotions that we also binge and eat on, because we have to somehow stop feeling the discomfort. And again, the escape, and that's the cycle repeats itself. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I really loved how you shared that personal piece of journey. And I think it's so relatable. I think I'm not, like you said, 100%. I think especially from the female perspective, it's like we have so many hormones that are fluctuating throughout the day. And when those that can also become a huge player, right? We have the emotions. How are we understanding those emotions when it comes to food? How are we having a change in those emotions throughout the month? So many different things. And you mentioned the piece with trauma too. Food is so integrated in everything that we do in our life and community on the planet, right? And we can have a little tiny like blip of memory where we can associate it with a trauma or something good, or there's all, and food I think is such a common denominator. It's such a common place for us to relate to others,
Absolutely.
but also we can use it, as you said, as a way to escape from addressing reality.
Absolutely.
Yes, I myself have lots of lovely
and I
things
think
that
as
I'm
well
addicted to.
and I
Healthy and
think
not
food,
healthy.
I think when it comes to food, yeah, we all do, isn't it? You know, so do I. But I think when it comes to food, it's just a little bit more difficult because obviously food is a primary need. Like we need food to actually survive and
Right,
function.
yes.
Yeah, and I actually believe food is also like our primary medicine to cure ourselves and to live a fully healthy life. I completely believe that. And and so we can't, it's not something that we can just give up and live without.
Oh, I'm not going to eat anymore. Yeah, no, that doesn't really work.
No, it doesn't work.
No,
Don't do
unless
that.
you're going to leave the planet. Some people are choosing to do that. But yes, you're
No.
right. It is something that we really need. And so it sounds like your work is really about diving into the connection of how your relationship to food, what's that emotional component. And so we're going to really talk a lot about today. So in some of the pieces, what do you think some of those common threads or behaviors that indicate that someone might be in that cycle that you're talking about, kind of like in that trap cycle, so to speak, of people pleasing, of emotional eating? And then we'll talk about how they can break free from that. But first, like, what are those signs? Like, oh yeah, this is definitely, I can see myself being a people pleaser or emotional eater.
Yeah. So as far as people pleasing goes, I think every time you find yourself feeling uncomfortable for saying no and end up saying yes. So when we say yes, when we want to say no, or when we maybe stay longer in an environment that we're not comfortable in, because we are conscious of how other people may feel if we were to leave. Right. Or maybe when we are going out and eating things that we don't really want to eat, but we were in a group and everybody was eating that, and so was I, because if I didn't, I would have been singled out.
Like pizza. For me, like I don't eat cheese and bread. So when it's like friends want to go out at pizza, I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do here? I'm going to have gluten-free pizza, or I'm just going to say, let everybody know. Yeah, totally. A social environment is a huge one, especially for listeners out there that are trying to change their diet, change their food sensitivity, maybe change their lifestyle. And they've created a social community around a specific eating habit.
Yes. Yeah. And it can be awkward. Sometimes people question you about it, not like in a confident place. So actually, again, have the sovereignty to own yourself and say no, then you can start lose yourself in all of these little things. And I think when it comes to people pleasing as well, is every time you're not authentic in order to keep the connection with that one person or that group of people. And how you know that you're doing that is if you connect with your body, because your body will tell you when you start feeling a little bit agitated, or when you start feeling something isn't quite right and you might not know what it is. Just check in with yourself. Am I being true to myself? If there were no consequences, what would I do right now? Would I make the same choice, or would I do something different?
Yeah,
then
that's
you
a great
know
one.
that then you know that perhaps there is some people pleasing tendency. Obviously there is a spectrum for everything. There's never generalize and never put people into boxes. So there is a spectrum. Some people would be, I know I was very high on the spectrum of people pleasing because I was terrified of my fear of abandonment and rejection was really deep from my childhood trauma. So you will know where you are in the spectrum. And if you recognize yourself having these tendencies, just try and notice, what do you do just after that? Do you find yourself, after you leave the environment where you felt that you have forced yourself to stay, do you find yourself eating after that? Do you find yourself being hungry all of a sudden, or maybe eating faster than usual without really tasting the food and giving the time to your meal? So all of these little things are how we start to gain a little bit of extra awareness around our behavior and where it comes from.
Oh, so important. And when we're looking at triggers, I think so we can see some of those tendencies, but what would be like an actual like trigger, like you, because I think that maybe we should back up and talk about how the break free part. But I think in conjunction with that is you've realized like, okay, I do have some of these tendencies. I'm in this people pleasing mode. And what are then those like triggers that allow me to be moved out of my authenticity? Because I think that's the place where you're like, okay, great, I'm a people pleaser, but how can I recognize it in the moment and then break free from it?
Yes, so that's the next step. So once you realize that actually, okay, yes, I have these tendencies, the people pleasing is a similar behavior and addiction process than emotional eating is. Because when you're pleasing, just like when you're going into food and emotional eating, you are escaping something, right? Because how uncomfortable would it be to actually just say no? That's where you're escaping. You're escaping the discomfort and what you feel in your body when your body is saying, I don't want to do this, but what comes out of your mouth is actually, yeah, sure, I'll make the time, or I'll
no problem.
Exactly. I'll cancel off my plan to make it work for you.
What can I do for you as your magic queen of tasks?
Absolutely. And always being available when actually how uncomfortable is for you to say, I'm not available right now. I need some space for myself. And that's how you then start asking yourself, okay, why am I escaping this discomfort? And again, like I said before, why is the discomfort there in the first place? And with a lot of people pleaser, again, we go into childhood and trauma, because people pleasing is a trauma response to fear. The fear being the fear of abandonment and rejection, which in childhood would have been very real. I don't connect with you as my parent or as my caregiver, I am going to literally die because you need to feed me, you need to care for me. I am not able to care for myself. However, in adulthood, if you don't like me, I am going to be just fine. I might not like that you don't like me. I may prefer that you would agree with me, but I can be okay even if that doesn't happen. And that's the switch we eventually get to when we do the work, to actually say, a people pleaser subconsciously says, I can't be okay if you are not okay with me. But where we have to get to with the work is, I would like you to be okay with me and agree with my choices and what I'm doing, but I can be okay with myself even if you're not okay with me. And that is life-changing.
Right. Yes, totally. That's so huge. And that's sometimes that could be a big leap for someone, especially if been since childhood, been a people pleaser. And the establishing that relationship with food, does it also stem with those childhood relationships a lot? And the triggers is whether you're, I don't know, trying to please like your mother or your father, your friends, a lot. Does that come a lot from that emotional upbringing as a child?
Yes, it definitely comes from how we have learned to be in childhood as a result of our environment. You know how people say our mind shapes our reality, but at one point in our childhood, our reality shaped our minds. And now that's the mind that we have to shape our reality today in adulthood. But at the beginning of time is because when we are born, our mind is perfection, like it's blank. There is nothing there. We are completely learning everything, right? That's why we are curious. The curiosity, we touch things, we smell, and we learn all this. And our environment shapes our mind. We learn about ourselves through what we experience and what we witness around us. So if we experience something like, and that's the thing with trauma as well, trauma is not just the big T traumas that we all talk about. It's also something as small as go back to your room and don't come back until you're happy or until you stop crying. So what a child receives with that is, I'm not accepted if I cry. I'm only loved when I'm happy. And these subtle things, that's what starts shaping our beliefs about ourselves and how we develop our self-worth, how we relate to other people, and so on. And that's why a lot of the emotional eating healing work is all about childhood trauma and healing that part of you that is still stuck in that emotion.
Right. Yes. Oh, so important. And I think everyone that's listening out there probably has a memory of some type of food event, whether that's from a reward. I think the reward system, I especially see it now, I think because everybody's so busy trying to manage their life and their children, they can, okay, my kid is just having a problem, crying or something, and they'll give them some kind of food reward. And I'm like, I see like sugar. That's what my, like most of the time when I'm observing, I'm like, oh, here, have this treat, have this candy, have this cookie to stop your tantrum. I'm like, that's got to be a real trigger in adulthood, knowing that if I'm misbehaving, all I have to do is eat something sweet and then my reality changes, right?
Yeah. And what we're learning is I soothe myself with food.
Exactly.
Yeah. And another thing as well that I see a lot is don't get up from the table unless you finished everything, or eat it even if you don't like it,
or even if you're full,
or even if you're full, or if you don't like it. So the child has no space to check in with themselves. Do I have to eat things even if I don't like them? Or it doesn't matter how I feel about this food, it doesn't matter what I like. So this is very important. Yeah.
Yes, so important. And what about from the perspective, there's some people say like my kid's a picky eater. I don't know if this is something that you work with, but it's so interesting. Is there this relationship that allows the child to be in control, right? And choosing all of these foods in a specific way? And what type of, does that create moving forward? Oh yes, I can only eat French fries and pizza. And then every time they try to have some kind of salad, then there's this shift. And I hear that a lot with my patients that have children, right? It's all difficult. How does that create a specific relationship with food and emotions when you're older, when you have that kind of relationship as a child?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to me when you say that is, instead of saying my child is a picky eater, we can, because how we talk to ourselves as well shape how we experience things. Instead of saying he's a picky eater, how about the child is just exploring their taste, you know, and how could the child explore their taste if they are not allowed to make their choices over what they eat?
Yes,
and
I
also
love that.
like I think like small children especially, they like experience with everything. Today they might not like peas, but next month they just want to eat peas all the time.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's just, and also like how can we empower the child to trust themselves with their choices if we don't let them choose for themselves, we don't let them struggle with the thing.
Yes, that's so important.
Let them explore different foods. They might not like peas, try broccoli. They might not like I have one of my best friends, her little one doesn't like broccoli, but she loves purple broccoli. And they taste exactly the same. I've tried them both. This is what works for her.
Yeah, who knows? Like a different vibration of the food. Yes, I think
maybe it's the color itself.
Right, the color. Yes, yes. Not wanting to eat something green specifically. Yeah, I think that's so important, Ilaria, because when we change our vocabulary, especially with ourselves and with our family, it does create a different vibration in our tone, the way we're communicating, and it does help shape things for our children, especially, and for us, because if we're working, like you said, on changing our relationship with ourselves and with our food, a lot of it starts from that inner work, right? That vocabulary, that thought pattern, changing. Maybe, for instance, I don't know, maybe you don't like tomatoes as an adult for some reason, like myself. Only like them when they're like right off the vine, nice and warm and super juicy. Like when I have that salad come to me at a restaurant or something, and it'll have this, I can tell those tomatoes are not the vine. Like, okay, what's going to happen to me? I go through the whole like scenario in my mind. So it's interesting how we create the specific vocabulary and scenarios for ourselves.
Yeah. And also this is what we're teaching the child, because if we're saying you're a picky eater, the child receives, I'm a picky eater, so I'm going to be a picky eater.
Manifesting it.
Yeah. How about saying something like, because they're learning about themselves through us. So how about saying something like, I love how you're exploring different type of foods and making your own choices about what you like.
Right.
How more empowering is that? And the child is going to be like, yeah, I love to explore more.
I know, be your own like personal detective or traveler.
And we make our life, I'm not a parent, but our life as the adult so much more simple, because we don't have to stress about it. And again, obviously there is a spectrum. So I'm sure there is like difficult child that doesn't eat anything. And there might be a different approach to that for sure. But as a general conversation or general population, there is a lot of don't do this, do that, this is right, this is wrong. And these children don't have the space to make their own choices.
Yeah, guidance and vocabulary. I think those are super key places.
Yeah.
I don't have any children myself, but I work with a lot of patients and who do, and friends that have children. And so when we're talking about this emotional relationship with food, how then do we start to break free from it? We're recognized, so steps of kind of, we recognized it. We see some of the patterns that are repeating. Think about the hamster and the wheel, like repeating over and over again. And we're seeing, but then how do we begin? What are the steps? Okay, I can start to break free from these common signs.
Yeah. So you address your beliefs, so subconscious beliefs about yourself, about the food. And that's like all the tools that you need to learn how to use in order to stop projecting onto food your emotions. So stop the escape, because what you're doing with the food is that you're attempting to solve a problem within yourself with something that's outside of you, and it's never ever going to work. And this is why the cycle perpetuates over and over. So address your belief, work on your nervous system, because the nervous system is want to reach for the food, and is in that sensation of like urge that is the healing. So you need to be able to be with yourself in the discomfort. And I truly believe as well that don't need to meditate, you don't need to go for a walk, because also those can be avoidance and distraction. I'm gonna go for a walk so I don't have to think about that. No, be with that and go for a walk. So be with yourself, just completely still, and then just let this experience be there with you and accept it and have a conversation with it. And of course, this is the work that I do one-to-one with my clients, being able to be with the emotion and then understand, why is this pain there in the first place? And this is where childhood memories may come up or may not. And it doesn't really matter, because what you do is that you work with the emotion in the body, and trauma is in the body. It's not so much in the mind. That's why they say you can't talk yourself out of trauma. I always say you have to feel yourself through the experience.
Feel the trauma
in the body.
Yeah, that's so key. And I really like what you said about not having a place of avoidance, which I think that's kind of like the levels of healing, right? So, okay, you can acknowledge it. Are you going to address it, the trauma that's in the room, or are you going to totally avoid it? And that can be, again, like with the food, right? Going back to, okay, I recognize that. Maybe I'm going to use a different vice to help me move through that. And being in the moment, like you said, that's great advice. So because key. Because then you really go into yourself, right? That is center and feeling what that maybe that particular food is for you. What's that feeling around it? What does it recreate? What are some ways? What's that like deep emotion? I think we eat so fast, it's like we don't even connect sometimes with the food or what's going on. And even in the moment, I'm going to eat in the car, I'm going to, take my kids to work or school, and all those pieces. You're seeing people have just tuned out of what the food even is doing in their body from the emotional component.
Yeah, that's the whole health conversation that comes in as well. It's not just about stopping the binge eating because you don't want to deal with your emotions with food, but it's about health. What is that doing to your health? What is eating healthy even? Because I think this is like a huge misconception as well. What the media tells us that health is not actually what eating healthy looks like on your plate. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so, Ilaria, you practice something called NLP, and I'd love for you to talk about what that is for our listeners and talk about how you use that in maybe like a specific practice or exercise. I don't know if people could do that in something that's not like working with you one-on-one, but explain how that releases some of that emotional eating trauma.
Yes. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and is one of the tools that I use when I work with my clients, especially to get to the beliefs that they have about themselves. NLP for me is a series of very challenging questions that allow you to think differently about where you are or what you believe in and your point of view, and analyze kind of things in that way in mind level. However, once we have explored this, we get to a feeling. And that's when we go in the body with the trauma work and the somatic work that I've put together in my methodology, if you want to call it that way,
Mm-hmm.
my system to heal the emotion in the body. Because again, with NLP, you won't be able to heal trauma. NLP is more about the coaching, like it's future paced and is exploratory in terms of exploring your beliefs, digging very deep into like your motives and the purpose of why you do things. But we have to then go in the body, and that is an extremely important part of the process, because what you said before about being with yourself, what we were saying is that's where trauma gets healed, because trauma is a disconnection to ourselves. Like we were saying at the beginning, we choose to connect instead of being authentic, disconnecting to what our truth is in order to get something outside of us, which is the approval and the connection and the little green tick. You're okay.
check.
Approved.
Right. Yes, approved. You get the stamp of Ilaria approval.
Exactly. And healing is all about reconnecting, and we can only reconnect with ourselves if we are able to be with those emotions in the body, understanding how that trauma shows up in your life, what are the sensations in your body, and just be able to be with yourself and be witnessed by someone else. Because that is so important, because trauma is when you're left on your own as a child, obviously, with emotions that you can't understand. And that's how those emotions get stuck in your body. People talk about emotions, not repressed emotions. That's also one thing, but unresolved emotions in your body.
Right.
That's the child, the inner child within yourself that couldn't deal with those emotions because you were a child. It wasn't
right.
you just couldn't. You didn't have the brain capacity and the tools and the awareness and the understanding and the brain development to deal with those emotions. And those emotions are overwhelming. And that's why the trauma, and that's why the belief, I'm not good enough, it's my fault, or because that's all a child can do. Just blame.
Yes.
Blame myself.
Because they don't understand, because they haven't developed the part of the brain of understanding yet. Which makes total sense.
Yes.
And but then we repress it or unresolve it, like you said.
Absolutely. So the NLP is almost like to begin the conversation, to begin the healing, to understand and have more awareness. The somatic part of the method that I use is all about the healing of the emotion in the body. And when you release it and when you heal it, when you are with yourself with that emotion and understand and go through all the steps that we go through together, that's when it dissolves. And then the urge to reach for the soothing won't be there anymore, because we have dealt with it in the healing session,
in the healing part,
in the healthy way.
Yes. Yeah. And does NLP reprogram thoughts? Does it work in that way? It's programming, and it's also reprogramming, right? It does both pieces.
Yeah, because NLP is, you will then, like we talked before about language, how you talk to yourself. So you rephrase things around in a way that works for you. I think this might be helpful with people, like how people sometimes say, I can't say a positive affirmation because if I feel I'm not enough, I can't just say I am enough. And then suddenly I am enough.
Yes.
So you have to find a way that works for you. So a lot of times what I help my client work around is that tell something to yourself that feels true. I might not feel enough right now, and I'm willing to feel just a little bit better.
Right.
But and I know that I can do it. Something that feels true to you, that you can actually feel it in the body. So NLP is all about reprogramming those beliefs, reprogramming the language that you use towards yourself, towards life, towards the world, towards other people. And that creates a different reality. That puts you in a different state. Yeah. And when you are in a different state, I promise you, you just see things so differently. And it can happen so fast, because NLP is a very quick tool to reframe somebody's mind and reframe somebody's point of view. And when you're in that state, you're facilitating yourself to then go deeper in the body. And then the somatic work becomes even easier because you are more open to it and you are seeing things differently.
Right. Yes. Our brain is such a powerful tool for that transformation. When we actually can notice it, like those steps, recognize it, and then have the piece where to reprogram. I talk about a tape loop, like you're stuck on the tape loop. Like we have to have a new tape, a new favorite song, like to start listening to for our body to move through something that we've been so stuck on that we can't even recognize it. As the practitioners, we can recognize it so easily in the person, right? Oh yes, I can totally see why you're stuck. But the person actually says, there's nothing wrong, or I don't even see that. And then when we bring it to their awareness, it's like the moment, right? That light bulb moment. It's like, oh my
the
gosh.
breakthrough moment.
Yeah, the breakthrough moment. Yeah, I love those with patients.
I love that what you said. That's so true, because that becomes the story that you tell yourself. It is so true. The more you tell yourself a story, like the affirmation that you don't want to say to yourself because it doesn't feel right, that becomes what you believe, and over time you will believe it more and more. But it's being able to be open and willing to believe something different.
Yes, I think that's a huge component, like being open. And I think that's one of our leaps sometimes when it comes into that chronic disease state. Okay, like I'm in that place of wanting to do it, now being open to what the healing is, because you can be so stuck in your own labeling, and then society's labeling, right? It just becomes this thing that you're wearing, like your favorite t-shirt or something, where you're like over the crossroads, I have Hashimoto's or something. So like you become that piece, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to shed that off, reprogram. What does that mean for me? Who am I anymore? And I think that's a piece where people feel that's another fear, a relationship issue that comes up, because I have lived so long, even from the emotional eating, you've lived so long with having that comfort, whether that's, I don't know, a box of cookies or something, whatever it is. And so then you have to reprogram your brain.
And
to have a different place of comfort.
And like you say too, what do we identify ourselves with, isn't it? And for people pleaser, going back to the conversation before, that's a huge part of the healing as well, because as people pleaser, we almost didn't even spend the time to get to know ourselves, form the identity. What do I like? What do I don't like? What's tolerable? What's not tolerable? What's my boundaries? What's okay? What's not okay? We didn't have the time to get there because we have always been so tuned into other people's needs and wants.
Exactly.
And so that was part of my process as well, my journey. I got to a point where I was like, who am I? Like now, okay, I'm not longer tuning to everybody else. Now I have to get to know myself. And then it gets really fun because you can literally try different things, and then you get to know yourself. But you have to get to that place to actually being willing to do that and stop focusing so much on other people and try and form your identity. And that's where your confidence grows, set boundaries. You're in such a better place because then you're living your life authentically to you rather than tuned into other people in a place of fear of maybe I upset them, maybe I don't, maybe they don't like me, or it's just not it's just no way to live, really.
No. And I think recognizing that place that you are living can then help move through that transformation. And I'd love for you do you have a success story that you could share with our listeners about a client who might have has broken free from maybe that people pleasing cycle or emotional eating, how they transform their relationship with food? Because I think that's very relatable.
Oh, I have a few. Yes. One of my most recent clients, actually, she has messaged me. I think we had 2 sessions at the time. She sent me this message and she was like, I am just amazed that I don't even have the urge to binge anymore. And I relate to that because I know what that was like for me, like 2 weeks into, oh my God, I haven't been obsessed about thoughts about food. And this is like so much freedom. And it gives me so much like fulfillment to hear that, because I know how exciting that is. So that's one of the things that I get the most. But one of my most long-term clients, I've been working with her for just over a year. And I think one of her goals beyond emotional eating and binging and the people pleasing work was she wanted a new job. She has been stuck in her career for 10 years, but she didn't have the confidence to ask for what she wanted, whether it was a promotion or applying for a better position. And I think as well, it was 2 or 3 sessions in we did some work and some inner child stuff came up. And she sent me this message. I can't believe it. I have applied for the job. And literally within 2 weeks from there, not only she applied, she was shortlisted. At the interview, she was offered the job on the spot.
Wow.
And she's now started the job last September. She's a teacher. Last September, and she absolutely loved it. Because she wasn't confident to go for it because she was self-conscious about other things that obviously I can't disclose. She just was staying where she was, unhappy, and just accepting that I've been in this job is not challenging anymore, although she loves her career, not challenging anymore. Then just doing a couple of, again, NLP work and somatic healing work, she just got to a place very quickly where she just went for it, and she's doing amazing. And I'm so proud of her.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story, because I think when it comes to work, a lot of people, especially with the pandemic, we saw a lot of people, and still shifting about from the place of recognizing if they were happy. You mentioned that, right? Are you happy in what you're doing? Maybe you love the type of work that you do, but is it fulfilling? Yes. Is it bringing you joy on a daily basis? How can you shift it? And we saw so many people change their careers and change how they're working, and we're still seeing it evolve, which one of the things I think was COVID was hard for the planet, but it had a lot of pluses too. And that's a huge bonus that we got out of it, is for people to recognize what's making them happy and what's not.
Yes. And it's good to always look at the positive side. There is always a plus side to things, isn't it?
The balance.
I love that. Yes. The polarity, isn't it?
Yes. I like to live in a world of roses, but I know there is a balance of thorns on the other side.
Absolutely.
Yes, totally. So when we're looking at relationships, and I think that's a big piece we've been talking about today, relationship with others, relationship with food. How common is it for someone to stay like in this toxic relationship, even though they know that it's damaging?
Yes, it's too common. I think it's too common. And I've definitely been there. And as people pleasers, we are more prone to have toxic relationships, especially with narcissists. Because of the dynamics that a narcissistic relationship involves, and that trauma bond between the empath and the person that gives herself up with the person that needs somebody that gives themselves up, because they're not givers, the giver and the non-giver, basically. Perfect match. I say perfect, quoting.
Air quotes out there, listeners.
But it is match made in heaven, because the narcissist suddenly has somebody that completely gives themselves up to please them.
Yes.
And the people pleaser has somebody to please.
Yeah, the perfect relationship.
And I don't know how deep you want to go into the conversation, and I'm certainly not a narcissistic abuse expert, but I've lived a narcissistic relationship, and I know how hard it is. It's extremely damaging to the person, and especially the more the empath person as well. And the reason why we stay, and again, we are staying and we're doing something that, even though we know that it's not quite right, but we are unable. That's why with narcissistic relationship, whether you are in one or if you know someone that is in one, it's not just a matter of leave. Why can't you just leave? I've lost friends over this, over their relationship, because why can't you just leave? I can't just leave. I don't know why, but I can't just leave. I was in therapy myself for 3 years to help me through the dynamics and through everything that I needed to get through to be able to leave the relationship. It is a process, but again, is the trauma bond. This, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's a trauma bond between the two individuals in a narcissistic relationship. But I'll tell you one thing. One of the most important moments for me, helped me kickstart my healing and eventually leave the relationship, was to realize that for me to be in a toxic relationship, I have to be contributing to this toxicity.
That's true. So, yes. We have to, the awareness of our own toxic contribution is key.
Yes. So what is that toxic contribution? What part of me thinks that it's okay to tolerate this, to be spoken to that way, to be treated this way? What part of me wants to stay? Because there definitely was a part of me that wanted to run away as fast as possible, but I couldn't. starting asking myself the right questions, been seeing my amazing therapist for 3 years. And then I did the work and I healed that toxicity. And the toxic part was my codependence, was my people pleasing, translating into codependency within their relationship and the trauma bond. And one of the most important lessons that I've learned is that we don't, you know how people say we look for like our dad, we marry our dad, or we
Right.
find a partner that is
Yes.
like similar to our pet. Yeah. What we actually search for is to recreate the emotional state of our childhood. And for me, that was so true. And when I realized that, I was like, yes, I feel the same, scared, afraid, threading on eggshells, not being able to be myself, trading my authenticity to be able to connect with this person every single day, always neglecting my needs, always. That's so true to how I was back as a little girl. And so I've done all the work to heal it. So again, the people pleasing was showing up for me in that as well.
Right. Yes. It's a kind of something that overflows into all aspects, which I think that's what we've been talking about that so much today. And from that emotional eating component, when we are in that toxic relationship, then that if we have that type of toxic relationship with food, it's escalated, right? It's just multiplied by 100% because one, we can recognize that narcissistic environment, and then we're trying to escape, but we use that food as a way for us to escape, right? From that self-worth, from that fear, right? So
Discomfort.
I think it's discomfort, all connected in there for sure. And when we're looking at developing the healthy relationship with food, right? So it's like so you recognize maybe you're in a toxic relationship and you see how that's overflowing. And then when we're working on developing with the relationship, what are some ways that we can start to bring in healthier foods, like a swap kind of a thing? If you say like you recognize a specific food group that is part of your emotional eating category, whatever that is, maybe you want to say it's, I don't know, sweets. I think that's a really big one for people. And so what is the technique when we're working with the NLP and reprogramming to do a swap? So is that even possible?
That's a great question. I love this question. Actually, I think I'm always pro working with our psychology rather than against it. So the first thing to do for me is there is no bad food. No food is bad food. And to not go on a diet.
Right.
Like, forget about diets, don't work, especially if you are trying to fix your emotional eating problem with the diet. And this is the number one biggest mistake that I see everyone, and that I made myself. I need to stop emotional eating. I would restrict everything. And on a psychological level, when we can't do something, we want it even more. There is just no other way around it. And I always say this to my clients. If you think about the word diet, what are the first things that you think about?
Dying.
Dying. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't do that.
I can't do that. Dying, restricted, isn't it? Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Instead of dieting, when you think about the word nourishing, nourish yourself. Now, even just what you just went, okay, I'm going to go on a diet versus I'm going to go on a nourishing plan.
Yes. That's how I call them, like nutritional plans. So I love that nourishing. Yeah. Because it's so triggering. Even for me as a practitioner, I'm like, oh, I don't want to use that word with my patients. It has so many connotations and energy. Just we're looking at the vibration of the word, right? And so we can use something like you mentioned, my immediate reaction when you said nourishing, like really, it's like we feel the vibration energy of a word. And so that does help us create a different plan, a different emotional plan.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned the energy, because when I think about the word diet, the energy is really low.
Right. It's like a cardboard, like yuck.
Yeah. The first word you said was dine. So there is no lower vibration than that, right? There's no vibration at all. But nourishing, now I'm thinking like abundance. I'm thinking like rich colors, thinking like goodness. I'm thinking like exciting. I want to go on this nourishing plan. Please tell me what it is. I don't see anyone saying, oh my God, I can't wait to start my diet. Work with your psychology, not against it, and just do yourself a favor. Just nourish yourself and educate yourself on what food is actually healthy for you. They always encourage people to learn about macros. What are macros? Carbohydrates, protein, and fats.
Exactly.
You need to understand what those things are, what they do to your body, how much your body needs. So with my fitness clients, health and well-being clients, I encourage them to track. A lot of people are resistant to it. And then when they start doing it, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea what I was eating.
It's awareness, like light bulb awareness.
Yes, because if you don't know, you don't know. And I'm not saying that you have to track for the rest of your life.
Diligently.
Depending what your goal is.
Yeah.
Some people might have to track more in a rigid way because of their fitness goals, but this is not what we're talking about. But track, understand, develop this relationship with food. When I eat, this is what I'm actually putting into my body. And now you understand. And a lot, like all of my clients pretty much, they go, I could not believe what I was eating. And so now I'm making different options because of course that gives me so much more goodness than this snack. And so you find your way. So there is, I call it flexible nutrition, or whatever you want to call it. It's nothing is bad. But if you know what your body needs, then you fancy some chocolate, make it fit into your macros. And do that for a few months so that you learn what your body likes, how your body operates best on, because some people need more fats and less carbs. Some people need more carbs and less fats. How much protein do you need? How much do you train? What's your body composition? So there is a science that goes into that. And I think to develop a relation with food, it's so important to actually understand what are you eating? What are you putting into your body? And is this healthy for you? Is this good for you? Because of course, if you have one portion of chips in a week, it's fine. But if you have 3 or 4 portions of chips every day, may not be the best option. Everything, you can eat whatever you want. And when you remove the emotional pull, the emotional urge to food, then you look at food differently. Right? Because food is no longer, oh my God, I need to eat this because I'm feeling so uncomfortable and stressed and anxious. Food is, okay, what's good for me? What does my body need? And that's such a beautiful place to be.
I love that you brought that up about tracking, because I think tracking is so empowering. And like you said, sometimes people can have a resistance, but tracking with macros, using a continuous like glucose monitor, I see so many patients have this like aha moment. Right? It's because like it's easy for us to get into a routine of eating things that aren't nourishing our body or aren't in alignment with maybe our genetics. What's that place? And when it's this whole huge, massive amount, and just even if tracking is a trigger for you, sometimes it can be it can be a trigger. Food journaling, I find, can also be a way for a good awareness piece for patients. Okay, let's keep a food journal over the week, and then let's talk about it next week and see, okay, wow, look at what was happening. Let's make some tweaks and see if we can change it, how your energy is, how your maybe how your bowel movements are, how you hydrated. So it's I love that you brought that up, because tracking is a great way, and I think it's empowering. That's how I always see it with patients, is if they have the motivation to do it.
I love that you use the word empowering, because that's exactly what it is. It's empowering to take control over what you put into your body, because we are what we eat. We are made, like literally what we put in our mouth makes us. It's the building blocks of how we're made.
Yes. So if you're eating 5 potato chip bags a day, that's exactly what you're going to look like.
Like a potato.
Like a potato. Yes, a couch potato.
And obviously everyone has got different goals. So you always have to cater that to different goals, but it's empowering. I love to use that word. Definitely.
Yeah, so important. Ilaria, I think we could talk for a long time. I love our conversation. It's so good, but I do want to wrap things up. So let's talk about a few things. One last question, and then we'll have an amazing piece where people can find you, learn about how to follow you. So if you had an unlimited budget right now, what would you do to have the biggest impact on the health and welfare of our planet?
Oh, as a vegan, I'm a vegan myself.
Yes.
So if what I would do, I would probably, I don't know, I would educate as many people as possible on what a healthy planet actually need from us. Because I think we have a huge responsibility to treat this planet in the best way possible. And that responsibility comes with our own healing.
Yeah, that's right. When we heal ourselves, we heal our community,
Yeah.
we heal our planet. I love that. Yeah. And like you said,
Absolutely.
education, it's all people, it's awareness, just like we're having, not that it's old news, but now we're having this big awareness around like plastic and how it's affecting different countries are eliminating plastic. So I think that's like the same thing. What's the impact, like you said, about being vegan? What's the impact of eating animals? What is it doing to our environment? How can we make a shift? Maybe you are eating meat, maybe you're getting it from a healthy source, maybe you're not. What is the impact? Like education. I love that you said that, because that brings knowledge right into empowerment. Knowledge is empowerment. Knowledge is key.
And if there's one thing that money could buy me, would be for people to have an open mind, because this is not about being right or wrong. This is not about I'm vegan, I'm right. You're not vegan, you're wrong. This is not about that. It's just about have an open mind and let's just have a look.
Yes. What would it look like if we did X, Y, Z? Yes. Yeah.
What would the consequences be of this option and that option? And then with freedom of choice is sometimes plays against you, isn't it? Because people make choices that you don't agree with. We can't be pro freedom of choice and then criticize other people for making different choices.
I know, it is quite the hypocrisy, right? Yes. We have to, but I think we can help influence people's choices through education in a lovely, soft, opening, heartfelt way. Hey, what about this? How about this?
And through embodying ourselves, I think through example, living what you believe and to stay in integrity with your beliefs and with who you are. And again, it goes back to living your most authentic life.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The whole ding. I love that one. I think it's super great. Education is key, and people are going to learn so much from this amazing episode. It's just a piece of that education component. Yes. So let's talk about where people can find you, website, follow you. Tell us about the freebie that you have to give to our listeners, and they can easily contact, and tell us about some of your one-on-one coaching. So if our listeners are like, oh my gosh, I so need help with my emotional eating, they can reach out to you.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram. That's the platform where I'm the most active. And I can tell you my handle, but I'm sure you will put it somewhere in the notes.
I will definitely put it in the notes. But
it's
you can still
Ilaria Petrucci. Ilaria Petrucci _coaching. And that's me on Instagram. And I do have a freebie that you can download again from the link that will be in the notes. And that will help you to break free from emotional eating for good.
Yay.
And it will be like a beginning to that journey anyway. And then the one-to-one work that I do with my coaching clients is on a 3-month basis as a minimum commitment. And we work through everything that is underneath your emotional eating. If emotional eating is something that it's limiting you in your life, that is constantly on your mind, is food is constantly on your mind and is stopping you from doing things, it doesn't have to be a life sentence. You can heal and you can reach for help. And I love working with my clients, that women that come to me, I am so fed up of being controlled by this, to think about food all the time, and they just want to stop. And 90% of my clients have a goal of wanting to lose weight, because the emotional eating has stopped them from achieving their body goals throughout their life. If you are stuck in these emotional eating cycles that are stopping you from reaching your fitness goals, then I'm the person for you, and I'd love to help you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. I loved our conversation, and I really can't wait to share it with the world.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.